Hello and welcome back to the stream. Thank you for joining me. I do hope you are doing well today. It is Monday once again. Every 7 days they do this to us. It's honestly unreasonable. Someone has to be held accountable for this. They cannot keep inflicting Monday on people. First day of the week and I'm already tired again. Aren't you supposed to be able to rest over the weekend and feel refreshed going into the new week? It doesn't happen to me. Tired all the time. But what can you do? Time keeps ticking forward. What I'm going to do is change my upload schedule and go back to posting videos on either a Monday or a Friday instead of on the weekend all the time. Which means that I'm sitting there on a Sunday trying to come up with a video thumbnail. It sucks so much. Hello Izzy, how are you today? Yeah, I'm sleepy all the time. The worst part is that sleeping doesn't help. I need to sleep less and at different times, honestly. I'm tired in the morning and trying to close my eyes and get a bit more rest so that I feel more refreshed just makes me sleepier. I actually feel better when I get up and start moving, which is horrendous. Why is the solution to tiredness not sleep? I refer you to my previous message. Also sleepy on a Monday. Sucks. But again, what can you do? But yeah, video thumbnails, as I said. I'm not sure I feel happy about the newest one. The one before that, very good. The thumbnails for the Royal Road Report series, I figured out the format and it's going to be memes on each thumbnail. I've already got a list of memes lined up for all the upcoming ones. The thumbnails for the rest of my videos, little bit more complicated. I need to put something related to what the video actually is on the thumbnail. I've decided to simplify things for myself by color coding them, so the Royal Road Report will be a blue gradient with memes, and other videos will be a green gradient with whatever I come up with that week. Usually it's a bit of text on the thumbnail. Maybe I can come up with something better in the future. Maybe if I'm super lucky and my channel gets popular, I can pick out fan art to use for my thumbnails like most VTubers do. Definitely makes things a lot easier when you've got that available. But right now the only thing I've got is my emotes that I can't use yet. Speaking of using emotes, hello Alexis, and thank you for following. One follower closer to reaching that affiliate status and getting some emote slots. I'm really looking forward to being able to use those because they are adorable. And now I've derailed myself. What was I talking about? Videos? Video thumbnails? Yeah, I need to at some point do like a photo session with myself and take a bunch of pictures that I can use for thumbnails, because at the moment I only have like a dozen different poses that I took pictures of and uploaded so that I can use those, and I need a whole bunch more. I do have my model ported into VR chat, so I might make use of that. There is someone that I watch occasionally on Twitch, Super Mika, who does really good thumbnails for their YouTube videos. But I think they pose their model in like MMD or something, which is a little harder than I want to go on this. I know that it's one of the advantages of a VTuber model being able to pose it, but getting that dab pose for episode 3 of the Royal Road Report was already enough of a chore with launching up a new tracking program on desktop and figuring out how to import and use the animations in it. Quite complicated. I do not want to throw myself into the pit that is actual animation and posing models, because that is a very deep pit and one that I might not come back out of. I know it's in theory not that difficult, right? You put the model in and then every bone has a little thing you can select, you can turn and move them. It's fairly straightforward. but it's time consuming, and I'm already stretching myself a little thin between videos and streaming and writing on top of that, and I'm definitely not going to drop any of those, so better not to throw something else new onto the pile. The Trauma was performing the dab. Dabbing is great, we should not diss the dab. It's a good meme. Should have held on longer. Honestly, some of the memes, you know, people disregard a lot of the newer memes as like Zoomer brain rot and stuff like that. And I have to say, I'm very disappointed at people's bar for what they consider brain rot. These are just regular memes. Like, when Skibidi Toilet was first blowing up and everyone was like, what the hell, I don't understand this Zoomer humor, it makes no sense. I was quite excited. I was like, okay, what kind of mind-melting idiocy have they concocted? And then I watched the video, and it was like a mid-tier SFM. Like, super straightforward. I mean, it was smooth animation. It used to be that SFMs were basically animatics with, like, poses almost screenshotted, not smoothly animated. But beyond that, it was just an SFM. Like, I was watching TF2 MLP crossover SFMs that were way more chaotic, more than 10 years ago, and you're gonna tell me we can't handle Skibidi Toilet in the present day? This is not brain rot, people are just weak. That's my official hot take on it. There's no such thing as Zoomer brain rot. People just need to get deeper into the internet. Back in my day it was called a YouTube poop. Yeah, I never got particularly into those, but we've been doing that kind of stuff. This is new. We've been doing it, and frankly, we've been doing it better. Let me just take a sip. People are too harsh on the kids, is the issue here. Is either kids having fun with something a little bit silly, and decide that they gotta throw shade for no good reason. Memes are good, even nonsensical ones. I mean, really, some of the people pointing fingers here, do you want to come out and claim that, like, E was a more comprehensible memes? Barcode Markiplier E? That made sense to you, but Skibidi Toilet is where you draw the line? Nah. So yeah, YouTube thumbnails and memes, and what else has been happening? Oh, the absolute worst thing in existence, the official Fail Better Games Blue Sky account saw my, not tweet, I don't know what we're calling them on Blue Sky, saw my posts about the Fallen London Tabletop RPG after the stream I did last week going through the document, the quick start guide, and was like, ah, shame that you didn't like it, which is, oh my god, soul-crushing. Being noticed by the creators of some of my all-time favorite games, and it being, like, the first interaction being me going, nah, I don't like this one. Could do better. Painful. No, you see, when they do it, it's cringe, which is definitely a thing that's real and worth something. Ah, yes, cringe. Cringe is not is not something that a thing is. Cringe is a reaction that you have. And usually it's a stupid reaction. I am currently cringing at myself for this being a thing that happened. Oh well, what can you do? I was tempted to play some Fail Better games on stream, like maybe Sunless Sea or Sunless Skies, but they're very slow paced. Like, they've got good stuff in them, and you can definitely do content with them. There's this roleplay channel I watch on YouTube, Rycon Roleplays, who does videos usually of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead, which are really story and roleplay focused, and he's done a little series with Sunless Seas, but it's a little too slow paced for a live stream. If I wanted a quiet background game that I could play while I'm just talking about stuff for a couple hours, then that would be my choice, but for a stream where it's the focus of a stream, it's a little too chill. Need something more engaging for that. It's something I've noticed. There's a different criteria for what kind of game you want to play on stream. There's certain games that I love that I probably wouldn't try to stream because they just wouldn't work properly in both directions. You know, something can be too chill and you don't have anything to comment on, or it can be too energetic and take up all of your focus. That's an issue I had when I tried out Random Access Mayhem, and not so much with Hades. I think I was mostly able to keep up with what was happening in-game for Hades. At the very least I was making reaction noises, if not saying anything. I should have wrote a list. Before stream I was thinking like, okay, what stuff do I want to go over? This, and this. And now I'm on stream, and I'm trying to remember. Was there anything else I needed to cover? No, mostly just me cringing at myself over that interaction with Fail Better Games. I've been subscribed to Fallen London for how long now? I started playing the game in 2014. I've been subscribed for probably the bigger part of that. Maybe something you might play again then. Maybe. I'm not sure yet. My first impression of the game was like, this is nice, but I'm not feeling pulled in particular. I do know that there's more characters and I might find some of them interesting, so I might go and play long enough to meet them. But the gameplay itself, yeah, there's a reason this kind of thing is not my usual fare, and it's because the stuff I usually enjoy isn't this kind of fast-paced, real-time gameplay. I play my plausible map games, or at the very least my real-time stuff is real-time strategy, like StarCraft or something like that. I haven't had a good real-time strategy game in a long time. I think the last one I bought was like World of Goo? When did World of Goo come out? Hang on. World of... Nope, wrong game. World of Goo is a puzzle game. What game am I thinking of? What's the RTS called? Grey Goo from 2015, so it's been 10 years since I tried out a new RTS. Damn. Yeah, Hades, I think honestly if I do play it again I'll be trying it out off stream, and if I get deeper in and go, oh hey, actually I'm quite enjoying this, I might bring it back for on stream, but right now it's joining the growing pile of games where I do one stream on them and then move on. Which isn't so bad. I do want to be more of a variety streamer than picking one game. I could have just played EU4 indefinitely. I certainly enjoy the game enough for it, but I wanted to bring a good variety of games in. But to be honest, with what I'm planning at the moment, I'm thinking of playing a lot less games. I've been brainstorming some ideas on various writing and world building related streams I can do, and focusing on that aspect. I still want to play games, and I think it's almost necessary as far as being a way to network and connect with other streamers is concerned. Like, there's not a lot of people doing collab streams for storytelling or book discussion, you know. I think the only one I know of who does that kind of stuff is Almantis. So it's not a huge lot there, whereas everyone plays video games and everyone collabs video games, so I do want some of that on my channel. But I'm thinking of changing the ratio and doing maybe half of each, maybe even leaning more into the writing and world building stuff. It all depends really on how many topics and interesting ideas I can come up with to talk about on stream writing wise, you know? So, you know, something like what I did last week, the kind of not quite review, more like assessment overview of the tabletop RPG. I did start having a look around for other systems I might go through on stream and see if they're interesting. So stuff like that. Streams like I've done in the past where it's like a certain concept that I want to practice writing on. Like I did one stream where I wrote a couple of fight scene snippets, something like that. Some topics that I might want to discuss. I do have a few topics that I thought could be suitable for stream, but I was also thinking that maybe I save those for videos because they are fairly interesting. I could do both. I could do a stream and then a video with these conclusions I come to from the stream. Who knows? A book club stream could be fun though, get a collab to read a book and go over it and stuff. Yeah, that could be pretty interesting. I need to find some people for it. I've gone looking for book-related VTubers, and it's kind of painfully difficult because there's very few, and the majority I've managed to dig up are not making content anymore. They've quit sometime within the last year or two, haven't posted anything in 6 months plus. I found one person who streams on YouTube that I want to check out and see what their streams are like, and then maybe see if I reach out to them to do something together, but one person is not a huge amount. But we'll see, maybe I can find more people. There are also writing adjacent people that I might try to reach out to. Like one of the streamers I watch is Index Page, which is a very, very fun name. I like that little play on words. Who, as far as I've seen, doesn't stream writing or anything related themselves, but their whole thing is that they're themed around books and a library, and they do have plans to do writing. So maybe I can reach out to them and see if we can discuss something there. Could be interesting. That would make, if both of them get back to me, that would make 3 people, which would be enough for a book club, maybe. Then we just have to figure out the scheduling, because I don't think any of us are in the same time zone. It's honestly painful sometimes being in the EU time zones, because most of the people that I watch and most of the people that I might want to interact with start coming online sometime around 10 in the evening and then streaming a little later than that. Lots of my favorite streamers all go live at like 2 AM, which means even watching their streams is not really an option, let alone collabing with them at any point. Very unfortunate. I don't know if I said this in my head last stream or if this is something I actually mentioned in a previous stream, but I do sometimes wish the Flat Earthers were right, just so that we could be on a disk and have the sun hit everywhere at once, do away with time zones. It would make things so much more convenient. I'd almost hope for us to get into the space age more quickly so we can all be on spaceship time, but then I realized no, everyone's going to be on a different ship and they're all going to be on their own time, not even in a time zone. Coordination will become impossible. Completely impossible. I would absolutely put up with it if it meant being on a spaceship, don't get me wrong. I'll take that. But there's always downsides to everything, no matter how awesome it is. I'm flicking back and forth between some tabs while I talk, and 9 views in 19 hours? I'm getting consistency at this point. Partially that's on me for actually uploading 3 weeks in a row, which is an improvement. But yeah, there's at least a few people who are interested in the videos, and my god, it feels immensely gratifying. I had some people comment on the thread I have on the Royal Road forums that they're like, because I hadn't uploaded another episode of Royal Road Report for a while over Christmas, I had people comment on a thread on Royal Road on the forums asking if this would be continuing because they found the concept interesting, which is so incredible. I see sometimes people like on Reddit and stuff, talking about Royal Road and complaining about all the people who comment thanks for the chapter whenever a new chapter of the world comes out, and being like, well, you know, why don't you post an actual comment that contributes to the discussion or whatever. But from an author's perspective, getting those consistent pieces of interaction is crucial to your motivation. It does amazing things for your own perception of whether what you're doing is worth the effort, to see people come in and consistently be like, yeah, I'm reading this, I'm interacting. You know, views are nice, but someone can click on, go, not interested, and click off, and that still counts as a view. You know, that still ticks up your numbers. For them to stop and write a thank you on a chapter, it's huge. Yeah, a number can mean anything, but a comment sticks with you. The appreciation is hugely appreciated. Alright, well that's enough stalling. We now get to the difficult part of the stream where I go, it's Monday and I'm tired and I honestly don't even know what I'm going to do on the stream. I have some writing topics that I looked at and can potentially go over. Some things that I've been workshopping potentially for a video that I can just yap about for an hour or two. Or we can go play a game. Not sure what game. I mean, there's always like HoloCure or Balatro. I've kicked my Balatro addiction for the time being, haven't played that in a little while. Or something else. I've got so many games and nothing to play. It's the eternal issue. You look at your Steam library and you're like, oh, there's so many things, there's all these games in here, what do I pick, what do I go with? And then half an hour later, you've scrolled through the entire thing 4 times and go, maybe I'll just watch a YouTube video. Maybe that will be more interesting instead. Some of them I almost want to play too much, where I'm like, well, this is a game I really want to sit down and appreciate. I can't just get into this quickly now and check it out. I need to set time aside and focus on this game. And then it ends up never getting played. That's the thing I had with Hades, where Hades was something that was so hyped up by so many people, but I was like, well, I can't just play this whenever and see how it goes. I need to properly plan ahead and make a thing of it. And then eventually I was just like, hey, it's 60% off on Steam. Just play it. Just launch the damn game and play it. You're getting nowhere by constantly waiting for the opportune moment. Gonna take a drink. And on that note, I don't think I'm feeling HoloCure right now. And Balatro at the moment, I'm trying to beat the second to last stake. I think it's the purple stake before gold, and I've been stuck on it. So boot up like 5 different idle games and soup it. I mean, to be fair, not on this Steam account, on my regular one, I have been doing that recently. I've ended up dropping most of them again, because idle games I at least kind of go into them in a burst and do a bunch of progression, and then most of them fall by the wayside. But like 2 weeks ago, I was launching up Journey to Incrementalia, Orb of Creation, Antimatter Galaxies, Trimps, Stuck in Time, 64, and Civ Idol, all at the same time. I just, going back and forth between them as each one finished with a particular upgrade or whatever, and then going back again. And now the only one I'm still opening is Antimatter Galaxies, and every now and then Trimps. Develop a cookie clicker addiction. I've got a cookie clicker save file in my browser that's how old now? Let me open cookie clicker. There's a stats page in here, isn't there? When did we start? Legacy started 1,251 days ago. And I feel like I've kind of completed everything in the game. I mean, I can go to higher numbers and whatever, but I've got all the things, I've got almost all of the upgrades and stuff. I'm perfectly content to just let it tick away in the background forevermore. Cookie Clicker past a certain point doesn't really need active playing. I'm probably going to reach that point soon enough in Antimatter Dimensions, where each run and each step up requires longer and longer, so you let the game just go be in the background for a week or two. Ever played Universal Paperclips? The browser game, yes, that one's very fun. Candy Box 1 and 2, I'll add them to the list to check out. Yeah, Universal Paperclips is one that has an ending, and a fairly swift ending, which I think is good for certain idle games. Some of them struggle with their late game content. It either sort of peters out and doesn't really have anywhere to go to close things out, or isn't structured in a way that progression feels good, and just putting an ending in solves a lot of those issues, because you don't have to drag things out infinitely. You go roughly, it should take about this long to complete, so I need progression up until here, and then you can basically mathematically work out exactly what you need in there. There was another incremental about potatoes. What was it called? It was like a space one. Space Plan? Is that it? Yeah, Space Plan. That is it. That one's pretty good as well. Yeah, I think Space Plan and Universal Paperclips are both very good incrementals for having an ending. I don't mind the ones that are infinite, but I do enjoy one where the full experience has been carefully thought out in that kind of way. There's one I've played a long time, like a couple of years ago, called Evolve Idol, I think? Let me look that up. Idol? Yeah, the one that's hosted on GitHub. That one's also pretty good. Doesn't have an ending, but it's also actively still in development. So this is like a sort of traditional hardcore idol in the same vein as like Cookie Clicker, where the later runs are supposed to take like real life weeks or months even, depending on what exactly you're doing and how you're going about it. Which I like them. I love them conceptually, and I think Evolve Idol is a brilliantly made one, but I can't stick with playing them forever. Cookie Clicker I still play because even if it slows down while offline, if I just ignore and forget about it for 2 months, I can come back to it and have made progress, whereas like Evolve Idol has a lot of game systems in it, so you actually need to check in and do stuff and progress actively. It also doesn't have a full offline progression. You do need to be online. You get like accelerated time for offline time, but it only passes while you're online. Increlution is supposed to be good. I think I looked at Increlution and didn't like the look of it. Increlution. Yeah, this one. I looked at it and didn't see much terribly appealing, and also apparently, like reading the reviews, the recent ones have been mixed, and a few of the things people were saying very much put me off the game. It doesn't look like one I want to check out. Incremental game in early access, and with Steam's new feature, we can check here, the last update made by the developers was over 19 months ago, so I think at that point, you can consider it abandoned. But not what I'm going to check out. Oh, there was another very good one that I haven't played in a long time. Bitburner. Bitburner was a really, really cool one, because in Bitburner, you use JavaScript. It's a cyberpunk hacking themed incremental game, and to automate stuff, you program the functions in JavaScript, and it's very cool and very immersive. They've really done a great job of tying the gameplay and the world together in a very fun and what's the word? It's not immersion, but it means like the same thing. They've done a good job of it, whatever the actual word is. With how you use actual real-life JavaScript, but then there's a few functions here and there that come specifically from the game and let you interface with the game's various systems in very cool ways, and it's immensely satisfying to look at your list of programs that you've written and understand how they allow you to move through and automate your interactions with the game world. You don't even need to be particularly good at programming that for it either. It's mostly fairly simple for loop, if else kind of stuff. Realm Grinder is good. I played Realm Grinder a little bit, if it's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, this one. I played a few hours, I guess. I mean, it's an idle game. I had Realm Grinder in the background for a couple of days, I think, before going, not too interested. I think it was a very, I mean, yeah, you call it old school. I think it was a very pure numbers go up kind of incremental game, which I'm not opposed to if they're fast. I think Cookie Clicker really stole the march in that regard, in that it's the one game of that type of pure buy thing, number goes up, spend to buy more thing, number goes up more, that I still play, because I got to it first and because it's got that proper offline progression, which means that I can just forget about it for a month and then still make progress. A lot of them don't let you do that, and it's absolutely crucial. I think the closest I played to a pure number bigger incremental recently has been Underworld Idol, I believe it was called. Underworld... Yes, Underworld Idol. That one's pretty good. The aesthetic is nice, and the way the systems works feel very satisfying. You've got like several different types of progression and resources to increase. I found that one quite enjoyable. But I didn't... I started looking through the upgrades and where the game would go later on, and felt that it wasn't going to enough interesting places for me to want to stick it out because of the rate at which it was slowing down. Like the runs were getting longer at too quick of a rate for me to stick with. I'm playing Underworld Idol right now. I hope you enjoy it. I think it's pretty good, and I think the art style is also very nice. Yeah, I suppose Antimatter Galaxies, which I'm currently playing, is fairly close to a pure bigger number incremental, but I think it handles it in a very interesting and enjoyable way. Because you can play that game very actively, and with its sort of different generators and the different tabs and upgrades you can go along for the different paths, it's not a complicated one, but it is one that understands the appeal of things getting bigger and how fast it needs to increase that. Like each time I felt like, oh, we're really slowing down here, is roughly when I reached the next stage of progression and was like, well, cool, now we're doing a new thing and we're going fast again. You know, the thing that was before taking forever is now racing along. Where did you get to on Underworld? Because I'm just at Crystal 5. Crystal 5, where did I get to? I was doing stuff with boilers, and I think that comes after the crystals? Right, like you unlock the crystals by having enough souls, was it? and then you spend energy to activate their abilities, and I think it's a bit after that where you start to like prestige with the boilers and buy permanent upgrades, right? I think that's the order of progression. Let me take another sip. I have had thoughts in the past of making a incremental game of my own. Yeah, boilers prestige system, crystals you can unlock like up to 3 before boilers. I'm not gonna say deep into the boilers, but I'd gotten a few of the upgrades, the early ones. And I know there's a bunch more stuff later on. I unlocked some kind of book or extra thing and I didn't find it interesting and decided to call it around there. Maybe something later on in the game would have held my attention further, but I wasn't interested enough to stick it out to get there in the first place because the runs were already going slowly enough that I was wanting to leave it on in the background for ages, and it just didn't catch my attention enough. But yeah, I have had thoughts in the past of making my own incremental game, specifically a lit RPG focused one. And I think it would work, I would just need to find the time for it. As I was saying at the start of the stream, I'm already stretching myself a little thin between YouTube writing and streams, and I'm not going to drop any of those, so can't really take another thing on. Maybe that could be what I do this stream, or just suddenly pull out an IDE and start programming. No. I should not. Because I have some idea about programming, I also have some understanding of the work that would go into making even something as simple as an incremental game. I don't think that there's no chance that I'm ever going to do it, but if I do, it has to be handled carefully. I can brainstorm a little and think about it, but I've mostly already done that. So I like my more interactive idols, semi-more interactive. There is a browser one called A Dark Room, but I never got too deep into, but I did like the presentation and the style of gameplay a fair bit. I think it was a little too slow for what it was doing. It could have really benefited from speeding things up considering the story element involved in it. Because I only ever got as far as like unlocking, going on, not quests, but like adventuring into a forest and finding stuff, and was like, hey, this is a little too involved for an idle game. I think Evolve Idle did the side quest mini game a lot better, because it remembered that it's an idle game and to use the idle game mechanics instead of throwing in active stuff into an idle scenario. But I did like parts of what it did and how it presented itself, and was thinking about doing something similar to that. My idea was, because I like dungeon crawl lit RPGs, making one of those. So it starts off with just the dungeon core in the middle of nowhere, and you like click to get some mana, then you spend mana to expand your dungeon and start spawning things, you deal with intruders and they generate resources. And then I was thinking about, because there's a lot you can do there, and I would probably take a lot of inspiration from a few good dungeon core stories like Blue Core, in terms of what kind of stuff you put in your dungeon and how you expand for more mana generation. And then later on, for the prestigious and for some not active but more interactive gameplay, I was thinking of having side quests and mini games where you incarnate a dungeon avatar and go into then like a new layer of the incremental. I think that's always one of the coolest things that incremental games can do, is introducing that new layer where you basically get the early game incremental experience again, but with the added satisfaction of knowing how it contributes to your main thing, and that you're not starting again, you are in fact moving forward to just higher levels of the thing you're already doing. So for example, in antimatter dimensions, you start off with making antimatter. Like you're in, the game doesn't really have laws, so you're in, I don't know, wherever void, I guess, and you have an antimatter dimension that you purchase using antimatter, and it provides you more antimatter, which you use to make more antimatter dimensions, etc, etc. Once you have enough antimatter, the universe collapses in on itself and you make infinity energy, and now you have infinity dimensions, and what they do is that the more infinity energy you have, the more of a multiplier you get to your antimatter production. So you're playing the same game again of unlocking infinity dimensions exactly the same way you did antimatter dimensions, except slower, but it feels satisfying and like progress because it means you get antimatter more quickly. Your base resource is now going way up from where it was before. You get all the feeling of progression, but all of the ease of early game a second time. And then after the infinities, you get eternities, and you get the whole thing again a third time. It does change things up a little bit and introduce new mechanics as you go along. Like with the eternities, you've, instead of just upgrades like you did the first two times, you now have this kind of skill tree kind of thing, where you invest points in and pick which upgrades you want to use, and there's different paths that are better for quick runs or long runs, or like active, passive, or idle play, which I think is very interesting and good. And then Evolve Idle is a little more hardcore on the reset stuff, where you start off like as a cell and evolve, and you ditch those resources. Like at first you're collecting DNA and plasma and whatever, and you ditch those, and now you're a proper multicellular organism, and you've got wood and stone to harvest for your civilization. But at that point, once you go past that and then get to like space and stuff, you are adding new resources on top of the stuff you were already doing, and each new expansion to the solar, interstellar, intergalactic, interdimensional stage always adds more stuff on top, that you then have a new thing to start on, while keeping the old stuff that you were already on. Hello. What? Look at me. The stuff that they do to try and avoid being caught up by the filters, the little accents underneath some of the letters so that they don't get caught. Anyway, and I don't get many of them, I imagine because I'm a fairly small streamer and there's not many people watching, but I do get them every now and then, and it's irritating. But I don't know what I could do about it, because they're constantly changing themselves up. The eternal arms race between security and security circumvention. I'm actually not sure where we're at the moment in that particular arms race in refers to ad blockers, because I saw a lot of people talking about Google and Chrome wanting to remove adblock in all of its forms, but nothing seems to have come of that. My ad blocker on Chrome is still functioning perfectly well. I don't know if they dropped it or if they've just failed to take it down. I don't know. It's strange, but I'm very glad it still works, because frankly an ad blocker is a necessary security feature for browsing the internet at this point. Never mind like trying to dodge YouTube ads or whatever, just for a lot of web pages with the amount of spam and malware and nonsense on them, you need an ad blocker to go around the internet. It's necessary. I did see a funny post recently that was talking about, you know, those websites where you can download YouTube videos, like YouTube to MP3 converters, and the kind of almost tongue-in-cheek agreement / interaction between those pages and their users, because they're not strictly scam pages. the page will do the thing you want it to. They provide the service that they're advertising, but they will try to get you along the way. There will be a bunch of fake download buttons around the place, and if you hit the wrong one, you're getting a virus. But if you do it correctly, if you're familiar with their schemes, they'll give you the MP3, which is very funny to me. I suppose it's good bait for the trap, right? You'll keep coming back as long as it keeps working, and maybe eventually it will get you. But it's such a funny, like, Looney Tunes relationship between the user and the website, trying to catch each other out. Neither actually wants to give the other what they want, but both know that they can maybe get it if they're clever enough. It's very, very funny. Nice, we've drifted off topic from incremental games, and incremental games are off topic to begin with. Yes, this too is Yuri. All things are Yuri. The toxic Yuri of a person trying to get a song off YouTube onto their phone, and a scam website trying to bait them into downloading malware to get what money out of them. I mean, if you're pirating songs of YouTube, you probably don't have a lot of cash to spare. It's not like a Spotify subscription really breaks the bank. I will say though, there are some things on YouTube that you just can't find on Spotify. I don't have a Spotify subscription personally, because so much of... Speaking of YouTube, there's an ad playing in the background. I don't have a Spotify subscription personally, because so much of the music I listen to on YouTube is really niche indie stuff that's not uploaded anywhere else. These people don't have, like, these artists aren't on Spotify. They don't have, what else do people use? A Bandcamp page? Whatever. Their stuff is only available on their little 50 subscriber YouTube channel, so like really gotta stay on YouTube for my music. Speaking of ads, music has been stopped. Yeah, just noticed that. One day, when I'm rich and famous, I'll pay for YouTube Premium and not get any ads. It's not like I'm against YouTube wanting to make money, right? When, you know, I've said this before, I think Google and Chrome trying to remove ad blockers entirely, absolute insanity, they're a necessity. YouTube trying to set up a system where they catch ad blockers and don't show you videos if you're using one, I get it, you know? I think that their ads could use some work, and a lot of them are very bad, and I'm constantly getting advertised scams and ridiculous stuff. But the actual act itself of YouTube wanting to show ads, I get it. They need to earn money somehow. YouTube isn't profitable. I'd pay for YouTube Premium if I could afford it. And the fact that I can't isn't because they've made it heinously expensive, I'm just broke. Yeah? I think it's fair enough on their part. It's a difficult situation, and one that I wish I could offer a solution for, but both YouTube and Twitch, and the constant push and pull between content creators wanting to make the best experience for their audience, and the platform trying to get profit out of the audience, there's no clear, easy answer to that, because these platforms simply aren't profitable. I do think that they're going about it the wrong way. I think that the ways that they try to force really low quality garbage onto the viewers through their adverts is more likely to push people away than it is to generate revenue, right? Like people don't install an ad blocker because they, you know, enjoy going through the extra effort of adding plugins to their browser. They install one because they're sick and tired and don't want to put up with the ads anymore, right? Like I read a bunch of webcomics, and there's a couple of them where I keep my ad blocker enabled because the page is just covered in garbage if I don't have it on. Most of them, I specifically go into the ad blocker settings and whitelist those pages because I want to support the comic, and I'm perfectly happy seeing a little banner ad at the top and the side advertising either other comics or, you know, normal reasonable stuff, because that's the adverts I get on those pages, normal reasonable stuff. Meanwhile on YouTube, 80% of my adverts are for AI companions, and it's just like, what? Why are you showing me this? How many of these ads do I have to specifically go into Google AdSense and block and give feedback I don't want to see this type of content before they stop showing it to me? The answer is too many. Far too many. So I either get an ad blocker, or I do what I do on my phone with a YouTube mobile ad, which is just close the video and open another one and then hopefully get either no ad or a different ad. I've gotten very good at doing that on playlists, where I can just tap off and back on a video really quickly on the playlist part of the screen, and usually you do that 2-3 times, it takes a couple seconds. You can get the video without an ad quicker than it would take the 6 seconds to watch an ad. So I just do that. No idea what that does to the YouTube statistics. Hopefully nothing too terrible for the video's retention rates. I don't know if they count that when you click off immediately again, but I don't know how much I care either, because it's a nuisance. It's a real massive nuisance. Having to do that. Alright, I gotta talk more slowly because I need to take a drink again. I think my throat's getting sore quicker than it should. Alright, we're an hour in. This is officially my, I guess technically my first Just Chatting stream. I've done like half an hour of talk at the beginning of a stream before, but I've not done a dedicated Just Chatting stream. Seems like this is going to be the first one. The yapping stream, indeed. Green women be yapping. It is in our blood. You ever see green-haired VTubers? They talk for hours. I mean, if you give me a topic and just set me loose, I can keep talking for a long time. Just eventually the topics run out. You need a constant influx of new stuff to talk about. This is one of the things that's really painful about being a new live streamer and just starting out. A lot of the coolest and most interesting ideas only work once you're already big. How about controversial opinion? Nope, not controversial opinion, controversial opinion. Minor spelling mistake. A lot of the really cool ideas for content only work once you're already a bigger streamer. You also just misspelled sh the first time. Unless that's more of a key smash. Like things I've come up with for projects I want to do with my audience, in terms of like writing projects and writing streams, but I think would be really interesting. I can't do at the moment. I have to save them for later, because they require audience interaction, they require feedback. I think they'd be cool and fun, but I can't hit go live with this idea today and then just try to run it, because it relies on someone being there and interacting with me to bounce ideas off. Like if I want to do a stream where I'm putting a prompt up and chat's giving suggestions and I'm writing stuff for chat, or if I want to do what some streamers do where they have like a redeem. Oh, you have this many channel points and I will write a snippet from your prompt or voice act something from your prompt. Only works, first of all, if you're an affiliate and have channel points, and secondly, if you've got people in chat giving prompts and stuff. And while I'm ever so lucky to have someone in chat today being very active, thank you very much for that, Most days when I stream, even if there's someone watching, there's not someone talking, which means I can't do any of the many ideas I have that I think would be really cool, which is a shame because those cool ideas I think are what would help me to grow the most, but I have to grow first before I can implement those ideas. Kind of a catch-22, as the saying goes. But that's, you know, that's something that only perseverance will solve. You've got to spend enough time streaming to no one before you can stream to someone. And at this point, you know, my earliest live streams from long ago that are no longer archived are from a few years ago now. A couple streams in between and then about a year now of more dedicated streaming. I think I've gotten enough practice in of talking to myself for hours on end that we're pretty good at it by now. Not a skill that honestly I thought I would ever develop. If you'd asked me, I don't know, 5+ years ago if I was going to one day be really good at chatting by myself for a couple hours at a time, I would have been a little confused what you were talking about, but now I see that it is a vital skill to have. You gotta be able to yap as a streamer. Collabs, yes, collabs indeed. I've done one collab so far and it went poorly. I mean, Arrow was fun to play EU4 with, but Discord was completely balked, so the stream itself was terrible. In terms of like I almost privated that VOD. It's still up, but part of me wants to private it because it was just such a bad stream, because we were both really quiet since we didn't want to talk over each other, and we could never tell whether the other person was being quiet or whether they had been cut off by Discord. It was absolutely awful. Maybe I'll do another collab someday, maybe with Arrow, but unfortunately, time zones. Arrow is usually like waking up when I'm going to sleep. His streams are at like 2 AM for me. But Discord be Discording, it's terrible. What is that? Hang on, let me... Parrot of the Limes emote. I see. Lime, you know, I don't actually watch Limes, but I've been seeing a lot of Lime's content recently because she's been collabing with Bricky, who I do watch and have been watching for years, and he's been doing lots of playing, you know, Helldivers 2 with a bunch of VTubers. I think the most recent one was like him, Limes, Heavenly, and someone? Matara, maybe? I don't know. He also did a collab recently with my all-time favorite VTuber Juniper Actius, and they were very funny together. I do hope that they play more games together. They also played some Mario Party, and that was quite funny. I don't think I would ever inflict that game on myself, it's honestly painful. But then that's half the joy of playing games together, isn't it? Being able to be terrible to your friends. I think when Helldivers goes on sale again, I am gonna buy it, and I'm gonna see if Arrow's up for a collab. I think that would be fun. He's recently just been playing Escape from Tarkov, which is a game that I am uninterested in ever checking out myself. I do not need to be playing Escape from Tarkov. Glad other people enjoy it, but Tarkov has the same reputation as like League of Legends, where the people playing it, when you tell them that you're not interested, they go, "Oh good, spare yourself the agony. Like, you don't want to be in this game. It's a good thing that you're not interested, stay uninterested." Which is like, why are you playing this if you hate it? What are you doing to yourself? And they're like, no, it's actually really good. Just don't play it. What? Absolutely insane. That being said, I do kind of want to play League of Legends again sometime. It's just a good game, you know? I play other games looking for the gameplay that League of Legends gave me, and none of them have it. I thought Hades might be one, When I saw the gameplay of Hades, I thought maybe this will scratch the League of Legends itch for me, and it didn't. It didn't. League is such a unique game, and such a good game that just struggles ever so slightly in a few areas, like the community and the monetization and certain issues with the developer. What can you do? I don't think I'm ever going to get into it again on my own. There's just no way realistically that I'm going to enjoy myself playing League by myself, because it's such a climb to get into difficulty-wise, and the people you play with are usually very unforgiving to mistakes you might make. But if I get a few people together, if I get a 5-stack to play League with, you can bet any amount of money we're going to be playing for like a full day straight. Absolutely. I'll set a weekend aside purely to play League of Legends. If I were in HoloLive right now, DG Murin and I would be having a whale of a time playing League day in, day out. It's been a very funny arc to follow her, trying to convince everyone and anyone to play League of Legends with her, trying to rope Callie into it. And again, you know, League is the poster child of games where the people playing it will tell you, hey, maybe just don't get into this, you'll be better off. And Callie's definitely knows that and is trying to avoid falling into that pit. I don't know if she actually gave in the end and did play a game, or if she's full-on avoided it so far. I know a few people have gotten dragged into it. I think Ina played a few games and was apparently way better than everyone else, so that's funny. It doesn't seem like the type, but it is usually the, like, quiet artsy actually. Yeah, I can see her being super toxic on League at some point. That would be very funny. I tried playing League adjacent games. There was one that I forget the name of now, like something Fountain. There was, I want to say the game was called Demigod. That was a game that came on disc. Like a MOBA that came on disc and I think still had online functionality. But also wasn't very good. And of course Dota 2, the main competition to League of Legends. And a lot of people will tell you that Dota is better, and especially Dota players will talk about how they used to be League players and are so glad that they switched to a different game. But honestly, I don't like any part of Dota. I don't think it feels as nice as League of Legends does. I don't think the characters are as interesting as those of League of Legends. And wow, the graphics. I don't know why people talk so much smack about League of Legends graphics, because I think the game looks super pretty. Like, yeah, if you zoom right in and look very closely at the character models, they're not the most high detail models ever, but they don't need to be, and if you're playing zoomed right the way in, you're probably going to be having a pretty bad time. Pretty much everyone, I don't think anyone plays anything less than fully zoomed out, because you're just at a disadvantage if you do. And from that perspective, the game looks great. It's really pretty. The map looks fantastic. It's got an art style. Meanwhile, Dota is just kind of low graphics. And I'm sure if this ever ended up anywhere, people would have strong opinions on my opinion. Fortunately, it's just you and me here, and you're not gonna tell on me, surely. I'll tell them about your spelling mistakes if you tell on me not liking Dota. Okay, we're now more than halfway through my drink, and only 1 hour in. I think I can take up another hour on some writing related stuff. Let me switch over to here and bring up some window capture. There we go. In a bit. There we go. Alright, so topics. Topics for writing stuff. I had some notes, but I put them on my phone, which has my model on it. So hang on, I'm going to lose tracking for a second here. Right, so two things that I was thinking about recently and wanting to explore a little. The first was power spreads in Magic, and the second was creature evolutions. So what I mean by this is power spreads is basically if you're making a magic system and you're giving people powers, how are you choosing to distribute them, and what are the ups and downs, pros and cons of any given approach? So if you, for example, have one type of magic that everyone uses. So for example, bending from Avatar or Adamancy from Mistborn. Mistborn? Which is it? Hang on, I've got a book somewhere around here. Mistborn. There we go. So, everyone gets the same magic. Like, magic lets you do this thing, and then that's the same thing that everyone gets to do, and a lot of the interest comes from how you use that one thing that you've been given. As opposed to everyone gets a unique power. I should probably not make this like magic system specifically. I should make this how do I rephrase this? Ability distribution in power systems. So yeah, everyone gets one, like there is one ability, that everyone uses, like bending from Avatar or Adamancy from Mistborn. Everyone gets a unique power, like in My Hero Academia, or kind of a mix. Let me put kind of in Skullduggery Pleasant. Kind of a mix of that in Skullduggery Pleasant, where there are some set powers like the Necromancers or the Elementalists, but then you get Adepts who, over the course of the series, kind of evolve to be and everything else. Right, like you've got these people do this, these do this, these do this, and then these do everything else. And they all get their own unique, weird power that does whatever the author happens to decide they should be able to do in that case. And then you get everyone uses the same source, but it's super broad. And that's do I have a specific example of that? That's basically anything with like schools of magic, and magic being a more general thing, like the Magicians is maybe a bad example because of how that book actually structures things. But I mean things where, you know, you have a fire mage, not because magic is a fire-specific thing, but because that's simply how they've chosen to use their magic. Someone else might be a time mage, not because they're drawing from a different source of magic or because they're doing anything differently. They're both casting spells or using runes or whatever, but their magic presents itself differently because of what they choose to do with it. And that's kind of the three forms that I think this can take. You can mix and match, like I said in Skullduggery Pleasant, you've got you've got the first approach of one ability everyone uses, but then you've also got everyone gets a unique power, so I think it falls more into that category. And some of those unique powers just happen to be shared between people. And I wanted to discuss pros and cons and differences for each of these systems, and what you might use them for and what they might be unsuited for. The other point is creature evolutions. This is something that's far more prevalent in Lit RPG. You see me coming in Lit RPG, where monster evolution is an entire genre, but you see it in other places as well, and try as I might, when I'm researching it, I can't seem to find a origin for this trope, this idea. Maybe I just haven't looked hard enough. I'm going to spend some time on TV tropes maybe, seeing if I can find something, because I'm sure they'll have some information about it. But when I was looking specifically for Lit RPG to find the work that originated the idea, I couldn't find one. You know, if you want to look for like the first Dungeon Core stories and stuff like that, you'll find some examples given of like some Russian work from 40 years ago that uses the tropes. But monster evolution, I couldn't find anything about. So yeah, it's more common in Lit RPG, but you do see it in other places as well. So for example, the idea is that certain creatures are linked, like kobolds to dragons, or goblins to hobgoblins / orcs. And that one is a higher form of another. Like creatures changing and transforming, and those transformations being stronger, you see in other places, like vampires and werewolves are that to humans. But it's more and more you see this kind of almost Pokemon progression system of one type leading cleanly into another type, like imps to demons, and there are certain poster children for this. So again, specifically through the Lit RPG lens, the undead, demons, slimes are really big for this. You see it a little bit as well in elves, and this is one you see outside of Lit RPG as well, I think, where like there's tiers of elves, not just different types like the wood elves or mountain elves or whatever, but regular elves and then high elves, whose only difference is that they are more elf than other beings. Same with demons, you get like imps, little tiny demons that then become stronger and get bigger, different forms, and they become like devils and archdemons, whatever. This kind of hierarchy as well. Same with angels and counterpoint to demons, with regular angels, and then instead of being a different type, stuff like seraphs and whatever being considered a higher form all the way up to the archangels. That's something that I've seen in lots of places, used and presented in different contexts and ways, more and more commonly, but I can't really point to an origin for it, or a source for the idea, or why it exists and why it's used in the specific ways that it is, right? It just, as far as I can tell personally, appears to have popped out of the ether. Just suddenly, this is a thing that we're doing now here. The different creatures have a progression system. You start out as a little skeleton, and then you become a skeleton archer, and then a skeleton knight, and then you become like some other things, all the way up to becoming a lich. And of course, as I said, you see it in Lit RPG the most, and it comes, I think, quite strongly from video games. Except that when I look at video games, I can't really find many games that have this kind of evolution. You get stronger versions of stuff, you know, having a spider mob in some area, and then later on in the area you find that the group of small spiders has been joined by one big spider. Yeah, you get that everywhere. Tons and tons of video games, especially MMOs, do that kind of thing where you get stronger versions of enemies, but none of them have lore or gameplay where one is evolving into another. That's just not a thing. This idea seems to have popped up whole cloth out of the ether, and I think it's very fascinating. I don't really know what I would want to discuss about this, to be honest. I just kind of want to talk about it. Maybe make some lists of different creatures and their evolutions and see what I might want to include in my own writing at some point. But beyond that, not really sure. Which I suppose means that for the purposes of the rest of this stream, I should probably look into the first one. So let me get rid of that, and let me maybe also change our stream category real quick. Let's change the category to writing and reading. That seems like the most appropriate one for doing some, I guess, world building adjacent stuff. I'm not sure. Stream title can stay the same. I don't want to change that and then have to figure out what I want to put on YouTube afterward. Done. Updated successfully. Alright, so ability distribution in power systems. Everyone uses the same power. Specifically a limited power. Right? If a power is too broad, then that opens up potential for people to use it very differently and specialize, and loses one of the advantages of this type. Which is, specifically, if everyone is using the same thing, you can measure them against each other really well. Right, like if everyone if there's only one specific type, one specific ability that everybody shares, like if everyone in this world has telekinesis, and maybe it can be a little stronger or weaker depending on the individual, but mostly they're all level in how good they are with their telekinesis. It then becomes a contest of skill and trickery, essentially. Who can use their telekinesis in the best ways, and in ways that their opponents don't suspect. And that is a very confrontational approach to take of it, but let's be real, 99% of the time when we're talking about power systems and how they're used, the focus is on fighting. I'm sure there are books out there where the protagonists use their magic or whatever in completely peaceful ways, and that's the focus of the story, but 99% of the time we're fighting. Because power level is a concept that never leads to anything bad. Power levels? We're talking something slightly different to power levels here. But yeah, power levels can be a pretty bad trap to fall into if you handle them carelessly. Personally, I do love power levels because I read Lit RPG, and leveling up and being stronger is the focus, and not just in Lit RPG but in progression fantasy in general. How strong is everyone, and is our protagonist stronger than them, is kind of a core question, and it has great appeal to me. I love me a web serial that is just a long chain of fight scenes. But in this case, we're not talking about how strong are people, we're talking about what type of abilities do people have, and how does that impact your world and its world building. I mean, if you're comparing people by the numeric concept of everyone uses the same power and some people are just better, is that not power level? I mean, it's not numeric, and no. No, I don't think so. That's, I mean, power level, I guess it's power levels in the same sense as, like, if you've got two guys with a sword, one of them has better skill with a sword, which means they'll probably win. So he has a higher power level, he's a more powerful swordsman, but we don't really look at things in that way when we're talking about, you know, regular things like swordplay as opposed to Dragon Ball key levels and Scouter power levels. If you're talking about this line specifically, you can measure them against each other really well. Then to expand on that, it's less a measure them against each other in terms of which one is stronger, and more a who's using it better and how are they using it. So if you have, there's a really good anime called From the New World where humans all have psychic abilities and theoretically are all more or less capable of the same stuff. Obviously some are better and some are worse in that story, and to a pretty significant degree, like some people are way stronger than each other. But more importantly, how they use those powers are very interesting and can tell you about the characters. So for example, someone who psychically vibrates the air and then annihilates an entire field in a burst of fire, versus someone who picks up a bunch of rocks and then precision snipes with pebbles. Very different approaches, and that stuff is always very interesting. I do love telling a narrative and sort of expressing a character's personality through how they comport themselves in combat. That's always really, really cool. Something I've kind of neglected to do a little so far in my own writing, which I hope to rectify at some point. But I don't think what I've said so far has sufficiently really explained my point here. I need to express this better. I'm looking to the side to my bookshelves here for inspiration on like a series I can point to and go, in this thing, this is their abilities and here's how it's interesting. But nothing really comes to mind. I guess leaning into the idea of power levels, someone being stronger can feel more satisfying because they don't have an advantage of just having the better magic. Right? They've outclassed their opponent in a contest of skill if they win. It's the same thing as with as I said before, a sword fight, where in a show like Game of Thrones, which I haven't watched myself, but I do believe that there's a fair few duels in that show, and from what I've read of other people's reactions, there are a few points where someone kills someone else in a fight, and the readers are either unhappy that that particular person won, or very happy because they're like, yeah, this guy is the master swordsman, he deserved to win that fight, he's way better with a blade. Magic, or powers in general, superpowers as well, same, fall under power systems as well, or like psionics and sci-fi stuff and stuff like that. Magic can sometimes feel less satisfying if the people aren't on a properly even playing field, if they have just two different abilities. One of the big things in My Hero Academia is the idea that certain powers are considered better or worse, stronger or weaker, more or less useful for different situations, and that really affects the ways that people in that society are perceived. And from an audience perspective, it really affects the ways that the audience perceives the fights people get into. I think probably an even better example than Hero Academia is Jujutsu Kaisen, because it's a huge plot point what everybody's specific what are we called, cursed arts are, and some of them are a lot more immediately applicable to a fight than others, right? Like Sukuna shows up and cuts things, and that you can very clearly see how, this man slices things in half. I can see how that applies to a fight, as opposed to someone else who claps his hands and switches the position of two objects or people or whatever with, I believe there's a restriction that they have to be of similar mass, and he probably has an upper limit on how much mass. That takes a little bit more creativity. And in that kind of, like, it comes with its own advantages. In that kind of system, let's have a new tag down here, so everyone gets a unique power. Some powers will be perceived as better or worse. Yeah, some powers will be perceived as better or worse. Someone with a theoretically weaker power winning a fight through skill and strategy will be very satisfying to the audience. People love an underdog. I gotta be honest, personally, not my thing. I've never quite understood the massive love people have for underdog characters. I just don't find them that interesting. On the flip side, lots of people hate really overpowered characters, and I love them. There's several web serials and a couple animes I watch specifically because their entire premise is, hey, here's this guy who's absolutely unbeatable, would you like to watch 12 episodes of him trouncing people? And my answer is yes. Yes, I would like to see another 12 seasons of Arnos Voldigod, the Demon Lord, walking up to someone, getting stabbed, and being like, what, you thought killing me was enough to win? You fool. One of my favorite characters, absolutely ridiculous. But for a lot of people, they love an underdog, and a system where everyone gets a unique power, and someone starts off at a disadvantage by default because their power isn't as immediately useful, will mean that people want to see them win, and when they do win, if you manage to make it look believable and creative, it will be that much more satisfying for the audience. They will love that kind of stuff. It's a very interesting kind of overlap, contradiction you see in progression fantasy in general, where people love an underdog and they love seeing someone with a weaker power than everyone else gets, but people also love overpowered characters and someone being able to effortlessly challenge. And what you end up getting as a result is tons of web serials and animes along the lines of like, oh, reincarnated in another world with the weakest class actually the strongest. That is the premise of, I think, like 50 animes that I've seen over the last not like watched, but animes that I know exist over the last 2 or so years. Because people want both of them, basically. People want their underdog characters, so you throw someone in there with the setup that they're super weak and everyone disregards them, but people also love to see the main character win and curb stomp the enemies that they don't like. So you immediately reverse the entire thing by having them actually turn out to be the strongest, and it was everyone else just being stupid that they didn't realize how overpowered this class is. People also hate that, of course. Anything popular will have its proponents and detractors. Lots of people really tired of this particular trope, don't want to see it. I'm personally alright with it, because I love overpowered characters, and because I've been around long enough to know that if I see something talking about the weakest ability, the weakest special skill, the weakest power, whatever, it's actually nonsense, and that thing is going to turn out to be super busted. So I know from the get-go that what I'm getting into is massive power fantasy. But lots of people don't, and they still try to advertise it as not being that, which is a little disingenuous. It doesn't help either that, of course, it then gets muddled in with other things that are trying to play it straight. You do see people write stories like that and genuinely mean it. They actually do create a character that is underpowered and has to work very hard for their wins. It's less common, especially in the spaces where I read, because it's an indie space, and writing that kind of character well and making them interesting and believable is extremely difficult. You have to put a lot of work in to make the gift from the bit, like the how to describe this. You have to put a lot of work in to make it feel authentic and believable for your character, who is always at a disadvantage, to always keep coming out ahead. And they do kind of have to come out ahead, because while they can lose, there's a pretty hard limit before people start to get fed up with it. And that's a consequence of the genres and the connotations. A lot of people do come here for escapism and power fantasy. Here being, you know, self-published indie genres in general. So it tends to affect what the audience wants a lot. In other works, more professionally written ones, you can get away with a lot more of it. Not professionally, but more traditionally ones. Like more traditionally published works, you can do a lot more there in regards to having your character fall on very hard times, because people have different expectations out of the stories, and you tend to set them up differently. That might be another discussion in itself. What type of abilities and setup do you see in different types of stories? The everyone gets a unique power is way more common when it comes to power fantasy stuff, because it facilitates that setup of either my ability is the strongest and I'm going to stomp everyone, or my ability is the weakest and I'm going to surprisingly stomp everyone. Whereas everyone has the same power, levels the playing field and lets the power just be a tool for the narrative rather than a tool for the characters. The power then becomes just part of the world building and part of the storytelling, and is relevant in the same way that, like, sword fighting is. Sword fighting is very cool and people love to read about it, but if you're putting it into your story, you're probably, if it's featuring heavily, it's probably not going to be the actual art of the sword fight itself that matters so much, as it is who you fight and why you fight them, and a lot of narrative, character-driven stuff. Whereas if everyone gets a unique power, well, we want to know what everyone's unique power is. What can this guy do? Is it cool? Is it cool? It better be cool. I want to see a cool thing. Which is great. I love it. And something like Jujutsu Kaisen thrives off of that, but it's a very different setup. And then, of course, the everyone comes from the same source, but it's super broad is kind of a middle ground. I think narratively, this one still leans more into the same things, as everyone uses the same power. Because everyone could be doing the same thing, it's your choice that you're doing something different. So let's put everyone uses the same source, but it's super broad. We'll take a drink quick. Okay, so everyone uses the same power, but it's very broad. This one... Not speaking definitively, but this one I feel is the one most used as a part of world building. The specifics of the power matter a lot less, and the aesthetic of the world and the impact on society matter more. This kind of magic can do anything, or your powers, whatever they be, can do anything. Like if you've got psionics, the difference between everyone gets telepathy or everyone gets telekinesis. Sorry, highlighting the wrong thing. Everyone gets telepathy or everyone gets telekinesis versus everyone has their own special psionic thing versus psionics is just basically magic and you can mind morph whatever you want. Very, very different. Like how you're using that in a story is different almost by necessity, because a super broad power/magic system enables too many things for you to realistically put hard bounds on what can and can't be done, to an extent where you can use it as a problem-solving tool, I suppose. If you look back at Sanderson's Laws of Magic, and specifically the one in regards to an author's ability to use their magic to solve a problem is, inversely, or is proportional to how well the audience understands that magic. So the better we, the audience, know exactly what the power can and can't do, the more you can use it in high-stakes situations, because it won't feel like a cop-out if some character just pulls a random ability out that lets them solve that specific thing. You can get away with that a little bit more in the everyone gets a unique power universe, because if they've got a power that solves that specific thing, they don't have a power that solves every other thing. So as long as you don't start to be stupid with it and introduce new characters constantly to keep solving all of the new problems, then you can get away with the occasional, hey, this is your moment to shine, you can solve this issue. Whereas if magic just does whatever, it has to be a background tool. At that point, treat magic like technology. Technology can do a lot of things, but sometimes it's hard to access, or there are certain restrictions, or it needs an energy source, or whatever. At any rate, there are restrictions to how easily and quickly and locally applicable the solving capacity of technology is. And that kind of becomes a necessity when your magic is too broad. Which generally means that it becomes part of the world building and the aesthetic. So for example, in Cyberpunk, really thinking about it, those kind of that kind of progress in technology, if you were writing Cyberpunk 20 years ago, maybe a bit more, when we didn't know yet quite how far it could go, then sure, you can get away with saying like, oh, and the prosthetic lets you do this ridiculous thing. Nowadays, where we do know some of what's possible and stuff, and in the future will just get worse, you have to be way more restrictive before your audience goes, well, hang on, you can do that? Wouldn't this also mean XYZ thing? There's still a certain amount of suspension of disbelief, even now, but this is a topic that I bring up quite often. The room to play with in that regard will only get narrower. It's why hard magic has taken off so much in the last however many years, and why Sanderson's name is so prevalent in the discussion around magic, and it's because more and more people kind of know a thing or two about how the world works, So they're more and more likely to call you out on trying to sneak stuff in there that would actually just break the rules of reality completely and cannot be included, right? It used to be that the big ones were stuff like time travel, because it could ruin a story from a narrative perspective. We've just gone through this whole massive, important adventure, and now you're telling me we can just go back into the past and undo everything that happened? Why did we even bother then? It doesn't feel important anymore. Now, you have stuff like super speed. At first, super speed people were complaining about because, hey, if that character is that fast, shouldn't he be able to just win the fight? Can't he just run in, stab a guy, and then be gone? Why is he having to actually fight them and get caught out? Nowadays, if you bring up super speed and people are talking about, like, friction and air resistance and, you know, the trope that's been super popular recently, if you watched, like, Invincible or whatever, where a speedster perceives the world in slow motion and, like, super speed is almost like immortality, where now super speed is a curse instead of a superpower. That is a direct result of people on average understanding more about how the world works and being less and less willing to suspend their disbelief in things that are just flat out kind of ridiculous. I'm pretty sure the next one that we're going to see fall into this same pit is going to be gravity effects. As it becomes, you know, because before it's just gravity means things fall down, and then it becomes, okay, gravity means things get pulled towards a point, and that's kind of where we're at right now. But now gravity magic is warping into, like, black holes, and more you're seeing people see, oh, well, space and time are like the same thing, so if you've got gravity magic, you can also do time dilation. And as that expands and more people subject themselves to learning about general relativity and stuff like that, eventually it's going to be like, well, actually gravity doesn't quite work like that, and the mechanics involved in creating an anti-gravity field would actually break reality in a dozen different ways, so that's not really a power you can use anymore. That's going to become a thing at some point, in the same way that we see speedsters and time travel and everything else being affected by the march of progress. Which, to tie my rambling back to where we were starting from, brings us back to everyone uses the same source but it's super broad. You have to either be very careful in how broad, or you have to turn it into a background thing. Never specify, in order to avoid having to specify what things your power can't do, you have to avoid specifying what things your power can do to a certain extent. Like, basically in reverse. If you don't set up expectations that the abilities can do certain things, you don't set up the expectation, the need to temper expectations in the opposite direction. You solve yourself a lot of headache by just making it part of the aesthetic. So you're in a sci-fi world with, like, warp travel and stuff. Don't go into the details of how exactly every bit of technology works. Just say, oh, we have this device that can do this plot relevant but not situation solving thing, so I can just throw it in here and move on. If you have a high fantasy world, does your party have a wizard in it? Is that wizard maybe particularly specialized in a particular art? Great. Now the rest of the world can be super magical, and you can just not go into detail about how any of it works, and then you don't need to justify yourself why your wizard can't solve every problem with just throwing a spell at it. The Practical Guide to Evil, the web serial, I think does a pretty decent job of this, where it's a recurring thing that our main character, Catherine, hears someone talk about magic and it's like, what? That's a thing with magic? I really need to get someone to sit down with me at some point and teach me the basics of how magic works. And then lo and behold, a couple arcs later, someone goes, oh yeah, we can do this thing with magic. Or no, we can't do this thing because magic does this and this. And she's like, what do you mean that's how magic works? Damn, I really need to get someone to sit down with me and explain how magic works. And she never does, because if she did, it would break the world building in half. wizards in that story will make a comment every now and then being like, oh, look at them still using the previous system of magic, we've moved on to this new paradigm, and explaining some of the consequences of like, oh, they use far more energy, or they need more sacrifices, or it's more inefficient in this way, but never the hard details of this is why and this is how it works. Magic is just a background thing that affects the world building and that other characters use, but it's not a thing that our character is doing, which is very important for maintaining the fluidity of the story and not writing yourself into a corner. I think for the time being that's all the things I wanted to discuss about these points, and I think I got way off from what I thought this was going to be a discussion about. I thought I was going to talk about completely different aspects of like character building, and instead I've ended up talking about magic and world building. Might do another stream with a similar theme to that. For the time being, my throat is starting to hurt because I'm talking too fast. Biggest skill I think I need to learn next as a live streamer is pacing myself in the way that I talk. But we're reaching about 2 hours, which is a decent amount of time considering this was the It's Monday and I'm Sleepy stream. So why don't I have a look if there's anyone around to raid. I'm gonna make some more writer, author friends at some point so that I can raid people doing that. Oh, Mika is live. There we go. I talked about Mika earlier. They do a bunch of really good YouTube thumbnails for their videos, and I think they use like MMD to pose the model for that, which is very cool. Definitely check them out, see if you're interested in anything they do. I think they recently, for the past few months, they've been playing a bunch of horror games, including a bunch of older ones and like retro horror. And I think they also did a whole bunch on Resident Evil, I think is what they were playing latest. At the moment, it is Little Nightmares, which is a lovely little game. So I hope you enjoy that. Thank you very much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.